you very much, Ivan, and good afternoon, I should say. And now it's time to see if, speaking of technology, if technology works. Is that okay? Decent level? Not too shattering? Excellent. Thank you. It is great to be here. It is disconcerting to be here, specifically on this side of the ledger, because, of course, as you may already know, I'm a Queen's Law graduate, class of '93. 20 years ago, I didn't stand here, but I was sitting there, in fact, as far back as I possibly could get, near the doors. And I have a place in law school. And so it is terrific to be here, just a little odd. I may need a little bit of getting used to. And it's great to be here as part of this excellent panel, and I think this really significant topic, and a topic that I can tell you I deliver to audiences clear across Canada, clear across the United States. It is a subject that lawyers need to know a lot more about. The fact that you're going to know about it is going to put you ahead, I think, of a good 80 to 90% of the profession today. So I think it's great that you guys have put this presentation together, and I think it's going to be a great day. By way of, obviously, further introduction, my name is Jordan Furlong, you've heard that. I'm a partner with Edge International Consulting, you've heard that. I write a blog, it's called Law 21, Dispatches from a Legal Profession on the Brink. Been doing that for about 5 years now. My one little, self-promotional thing, 5 years running, it's been named one of the ABA Journal's top 100 law blogs and the only Canadian blog in that category. So that's why I refer to it as my third child. Only slightly joking. And so that's kind of who I am. And what I do is summed up, for me, very fortunately and nicely, in a New Yorker cartoon I came across recently. So don't let anyone tell you there are no alternative careers in law. You too may, 20 years after graduation, find yourself going into law firm retreats and organizational meetings, keynotes at conferences, and scaring the hell out of lawyers, which is actually what I do. And I can tell you it's at least as much fun as it sounds. It's actually more. I'm actually sometimes specifically recruited. A managing partner of a firm will say to me, I need you to come in and scare the partners. And I said, I'll do that for free. But I do, and the presentations I give, and I've given dozens of these over the last several years, the reason that they're intended to, and in the result they do actually put the hair up in the back of the lawyers' necks, is that I come in to help them to decipher a lot of the signals they're receiving from the marketplace right now, which are, for the most part, negative, or at least very disturbing to lawyers. And the way in which I kind of put it in context for them is I say, what you've got here, for the first time in many years, is a new legal marketplace. It is or new legal matrix, fine. It's a completely new set of assumptions, a completely different set of priorities and forces pushing the market in ways where that has not been before. This is brand new. Not absolutely everything about the law is changing, but enough things about the law as a market, right? This is the thing. Lawyers have a tendency to talk about the legal profession, and that's great. We should talk about the profession. We should talk about lawyers in all of the various constituencies, but the market is more important. The market is the purchase and sale of legal services in the private sector, in the broadest sense of the word. And you could easily throw in public sector lawyers and other aspects of, if you will, almost the underground legal market as well. But that marketplace is changing. The ground under lawyers' feet is changing. And it's happening in ways which are causing a huge amount of upheaval and a certain degree of unhappiness in the profession. And it's important that we as lawyers understand why it's happening, what it's doing to us, and how we can respond to that, and in fact come out ahead of the game at the end of it. In the time I got with you this morning, which is roughly half an hour, I want to cover, to the extent that I can, 4 aspects of this new market. I want to start off talking about emerging realities in the market. What's actually happening out there? Okay? What's going on? What are the forces driving change forward? And where have they come from and what are they doing? I want to switch from there to talk about the impact on us as lawyers. Not just today's generation of lawyers, but tomorrow's, you guys, right? What this means for you, the impact this is already going to have, is already having and will continue to have going forward. I want to take some time to talk specifically, because it is one of the main reasons we're here today, to talk about the role technology is playing in that. Technology is not by any means the only driving factor here, but it's a big one. And it's going to get bigger as time goes on. And I want to close out by talking about, not surprisingly, where the rubber hits the road for you guys, what does this mean for you, right? What will be the impact on your careers, on your role in the legal community going forward? So if that's cool with you, then we'll forge ahead. Emerging market realities. I hope you'll forgive the theme I'm working with today. Bit of a sci-fi buff and a bit of a movie fan. And I'm decorating today's presentation with as many evil robots as I can find. I don't have to ask whether you all got the Matrix reference. You did. But I'm curious, because this is more my generation. Hands up for people who know this movie is from. It is RoboCop, thank you. That's the Ed 209, the scariest stop-motion robot you'll ever see. Great, if you get a chance, download it or Netflix or whatever it is people are doing these days, because it's awesome. It's really cool. Okay, sidebar over. Emerging market realities. What's going on out there? First and foremost, not surprisingly, of course, it's the impact of what's happening to the economy. Here in Canada, we have been highly fortunate. We have found ourselves sheltered, for the most part, from the economic storms that have blasted the United States, that have blasted the United Kingdom. It has been a very rough go in both of these jurisdictions. From the financial crisis, from the collapse of Lehman Brothers onwards, and in the recession that followed, there has been just a tremendous contraction of the economy. In real terms, there has been a huge amount of deleveraging, both business, public and private individuals and institutions, way over indebted. They have been throwing the money into savings. They've been throwing everything they can into righting the ship. It's one of the reasons why the economy is in such bad shape and no one's spending anything. To put into perspective exactly what the challenge is like in front of us, at the moment of at the time when Lehman Brothers collapsed, average household debt of U.S. households was 130% of income. After 5 years of scrimping and saving and belt tightening, that percentage is now down to 118. Okay, so that'll give you a say, and it's not that it has to be like totally low. I mean, a certain amount of consumer debt is fine. Point being that it takes a long time to get over a debt recession such as this. We have been insulated from this for the most part in Canada over the course of the last several years for a bunch of reasons. Thank you, outgoing Governor of Bank of Canada, Mark Carney. Thank you, vast reserves of oil and gas and potash, fine. But it's only a postponement. It is not a full escape. We already in Canada have serious public indebtedness problems. We have a housing boom not dissimilar to what happens in the U.S. So what happened in these other jurisdictions is, to a certain extent, it's going to happen here. And amongst the effects that matter most to us has been a huge, huge change in client and consumer behavior in the legal marketplace. Consumers simply not spending as much, or if at all, on lawyers, and not surprisingly, right? Food, shelter, security. Lawyers are not really at the top of anybody's list of must-have things. Or they're doing it themselves. And that's already well established here in Canada. If you have a chance, and if you want a very sobering experience, head down to Frontenac County Courthouse, spend a day sitting and watching especially family court matters, and you will see so many self-represented litigants in there trying to navigate the system by themselves. And this is rampant in many other jurisdictions. Corporate clients, same thing. They are cutting back, they're doing more work in-house. They're hiring more in-house, which is nice, but they're also looking for other ways in which they can get work done. They're outsourcing to other jurisdictions, to other countries, to India, to the Philippines, to Finland, and South Africa, and other places where companies called legal process outsourcers, LPOs, are based. And they're looking at new and more technologically advanced ways of getting work done. All of which is to say, this is the primary driver. This is what's changing behavior for the most part in the legal marketplace right now. Fine, but we've had recessions before, and will happen again. I graduated into one in 1993, not a lot of fun, I can tell you. What makes this one any different? I think the reason this one is different, not just because of its severity, is because we have new competitors as lawyers that we have not had before. Or maybe put in a more constructive fashion, turn it around a little bit, our clients have new options that they didn't have before. Graduated in 93, called to the bar in 95. When I was called to the bar, the Law Society of Upper Canada was busy chasing down and prosecuting independent paralegals for the unauthorized practice of law, UPL. It's, you'll be hearing a lot about it. That was in 95. For several years now, paralegals have been members in good standing of the Law Society of Upper Canada. They are now regulated by the Law Society, same as lawyers. Lawyers and paralegals are considered to be members in equal standing. Wow, do lawyers love that, I'll tell you. But that is already the case here. It's going to happen in BC eventually with notaries. And that's just here in Canada. We've already been dealing with, I was chatting earlier with some of you guys about title insurance. Not much different. It came in and eviscerated a good chunk of the consumer real estate market for lawyers. Immigration consultants are becoming more common, and there's a real problem with a lot of them, but the fact of the matter remains, these are new competitors coming in. But what we're seeing in Canada doesn't really match up to what you're seeing in other countries. In the US, you've got a company called LegalZoom. If you get a chance, go check it out, legalzoom.com. There's a Canadian version, but it's very, very straightforward so far. It is essentially a fairly and increasingly sophisticated legal document assembly program where you can order a will for $69. I can guarantee you will not find a lawyer in this country who will give you a will for $69. And other associated materials. In the UK, thanks to groundbreaking legislative change, you no longer need to be a lawyer to run a law firm. So you've got companies that are called co-op legal services, financial institutions offering legal services. A co-op, it's got finance, it's got banking, it's got supermarkets, it's got funeral homes. A funeral home owner offering legal services. There's a trucking company that's getting a license to deliver legal services. It's just mind-boggling. These new competitors are coming in, and the first place they're coming, the first gaps they're filling are the ones, and you touched on this in your introduction, in the latent legal market, in the untapped market that lawyers for the most part have ignored. And it's a huge market. I don't know what, you can't measure something that doesn't officially exist, but in my mind it was always the 80-20 rule. I would say that 80% of legal services in every country are devoted to maybe 20% of the total consumer base. There is a huge number of people, and not just people, but also to a certain extent small businesses and certain institutions that go without legal services, for the most part because they can't afford the prices that lawyers charge. Other reasons as well, but that's the main one. These businesses are coming and they're saying, we don't have lawyers overhead. We don't have lawyers expenses. We sure don't have lawyers blind allegiance to the old ways of doing things. We are streamlined. We are high tech. We are really good at what we do. We keep costs to the bare minimum, and we can undercut lawyers' prices to a staggering amount. And again, this doesn't even talk about operations in places like India. So there are new competitors, and if you take a situation where you have a far more competitive marketplace, and you add it to a situation where there is a lot of financial pressure on buyers, then you're going to come up with, amongst other things, the third factor, which is what I call price wars. And this isn't price wars in the traditional sense of the term, right? In the sense of two grocery stores having a fight and like bread ends up 5 cents a loaf or whatever. This is a different idea. This is the idea that the way in which legal services are priced is changing, okay? Because traditionally, for the longest time, decades and decades and decades, the price of legal services, which is to say the price of lawyer services, has been variable, right? Which is to say, the client says to the lawyer, how much is this going to cost? And the lawyer says, I don't really know. And the client says, how can you possibly not know? This is what you do. Your website says you've done hundreds of these things. How can you not know how much this is going to cost? And the lawyer says, well, it depends. You're going to say that phrase a lot as a lawyer. And it does depend, right? And that's fine. But that's no answer for the client. And the client say, look, and now, not only can they say, I'm not going to put up with that, they're doing something about it. They're saying, we have more knowledge. We have access to more basic information ourselves. We have access to other options. And frankly, we don't really want to put up with the idea of something variable. We want something fixed. I want a fixed fee for this particular service. I want to know it's going to cost this and no more. Or if you can't give me a fixed fee, give me a range. Okay? Put a ceiling on it. I'm happy to have a floor. Put a floor if you need to, but give me a range into which I know this is going to fall. This is the rise of client-driven pricing, and this is new. This is very new for lawyers, because for the longest time, our approach to pricing was to say, this is my rate, and the amount of time it takes is however long it takes me, and at the end of the day, that's your bill, plus disbursements and HST. Now that we have actual market forces operating in the legal marketplace, then that's the, I guess, the third jewel in the crown in terms of deriving this change. There's other things going on out there. I could talk generational change all day, but I'll put that one aside for now. These are the forces that are shoving us around as a profession. These are the forces that are changing the landscape of the marketplace. Okay. What's it doing to us? What is the impact on lawyers? There are two kinds of geek in this world, by the way. Star Wars people and Star Trek people. I am firmly the latter camp. So this is why you have our friend Data here. What's going on? What's happening to the good guys? What's going on with us? Not surprisingly, based on what we've talked about so far, business is hurting for a lot of lawyers. Business is down. And keep this in the context of what lawyers are used to. Lawyers, especially in larger firms, are used to A, making lots and lots of money, and B, every year over year making a higher percentage. They're used to an acceleration in profits year over year. Some of the large American firms, it was standard to look for 8 to 10% acceleration, increase in profits year over year. Not revenue, right, but profits. That is changing. Revenue is tapering off. It is flattening. It is in some cases in decline. For some firms, it's in steep decline. And the reasons aren't surprising, of course, because clients are spending less. Lawyers don't have the same kind of rates and fees they used to have. It's not surprising. And it's by no means restricted to firms, to smaller firms or mid-sized firms. I had a breakfast meeting 4 months ago with the managing partner of one of Canada's biggest law firms, blue chip firm. And he's basically saying to me, revenue is flat. We're treading water, right? We're not bringing in, we're not losing money. We're not losing market share, but we're not moving ahead. And this is causing incredible consternation to the partnership, because partners aren't used to this, right? This is an aberration with which they are utterly unfamiliar, and they are deeply uncomfortable. So what do you do as a law firm when your revenue is down, and for various, mostly political, but some economic reasons, you need to maintain your profits? Well, not surprisingly, you start putting your back into cost containment, right? How do we reduce our costs? How do lawyers reduce costs? Lawyers reduce costs in incredibly unsophisticated manners. The first thing lawyers tend to do when they want to reduce costs is they throw people over the side. And this particularly marked the American experience in the wake of the financial crisis. In the weeks and in the months after that crisis broke, and of course law firms, many of the big ones were so heavily tied to the financial services industry. Oh my God, hundreds, thousands of lawyers, associates of course, and staff and secretaries and support people were just fired. I mean, they call them layoffs. They're not layoffs, they're firings, right? Because they ain't coming back and they haven't come back. And they did that for as long as they could, and then they ran out of people they could safely fire. And then they do the next thing that lawyers do, which is they fire themselves. They get rid of partners, right? And it's a whole different thing to get rid of an owner of a business, right? Because a partner is an owner of a law firm business. And the process of asking a partner to leave is a horrible term. It's called de-equitization. Ugh. Someone's maybe a horse. It's awful. But it's what happens to partners in law firms. And it's happened to friends of mine whose billings no longer hit an acceptable target, and they are asked to leave. And that's fine up to a point. Every business does that. Labor, the addition and subtraction of labor is part of the business. It's fine. At a certain point, though, you do run out of people to fire. And at a certain point, you can only fire somebody once. Okay. So then, what do? Well, this is where law firms are starting to get to now. They're saying, all right, can we follow our client's lead? right? Can we outsource some of our work to smaller centers, or outsource some of our work to new model law firms? We'll be hearing from Jeff today about new model law firms. Can we invest in software, in new systems that will allow us to do our work a little more efficiently, in a more streamlined fashion? And this whole process is leading law firms, and it's going to take a while, for some firms sooner than others. It's leading law firms to the idea of reconsidering workflow, right? How do we actually do stuff around here? How do we create our legal product? How do we deliver it? Who's doing it? What's the process? What are the decision trees that we follow, and so on and so forth? Closely allied with these two, and a place where the rubber is going to very much hit the road, I think, for you guys, is the legal jobs crisis that is going to accompany all of this. We're starting to see an element of this. What we're seeing the first indications with the articling crisis. To a certain extent, I think that is not a great way to describe the articling situation, is crisis. And it's great that Queen's is the least crisis-ridden of all the schools. My understanding is the placement rates here are the highest of any Ontario law school, which is excellent, go Gales. But articling in general, I'm sure you've all been following the news from the Law Society. They've approved a law practice program, which would be an alternative to articling. I could talk about that all afternoon. We'll happily do so over cookies later on. But the problem is articling is just giving us a foreshadowing of what's to come. Legal jobs, quote-unquote jobs, positions, full-time, salaried, pensioned, benefited, officed, secretaried, other words that don't exist. This is the past. That is the past legal profession. It's not going to be the future. Yes, there will still be positions, so there'll still be law firms and other entities that are going to hire people on that kind of a full-time basis. But those kind of jobs are disappearing in the larger economy anyway. What's going to replace them more and more is the idea of legal employment. The idea that you are employed as a lawyer, but you don't necessarily have just one boss. You don't have just one organization running you a paycheck. I'll talk about this a bit more later on. But the future of legal work is going to be mobile. It's going to be multi-client. It is going to be, nimble is a word we throw around a little bit too much, but it's going to have that aspect to it as well. But the nature of, and really, it's nobody's fault, by the way. To a certain extent, it's generational, right? This is one of the things when I talk to the Law Society about this, and I say, look, for decades and decades and decades, when the boomers ruled the roost, there was always growth, there was always more, because this was this huge pig working its way through the snake and creating all these opportunities with this huge demographic bump. But they're leaving now, right? They're taking their time, taking their sweet freaking time, but they are going to go. And in boomers, whatever else about them, and I have very few nice things to say about the boomer generation, but they're the ones who are doing a lot of the hiring, and they're not going to be around. So, those are some of the impacts on lawyers. Those are some of the ways in which we're going to be affected today and in the future. I want to take a moment to talk specifically about the role of technology. And particularly want to talk about the ways in which technology is disruptive. There, see, I finally got you a picture from this century. A movie from, generation I do not belong to. I belong to the Richard Hatch generation, Battlestar Galactica. Technology, in the broadest sense, I'm not going to go into this in any detail. And you, I'm sure, already know this anyway, even at a fundamental level. Two kinds of technology, in the broadest sense of the term. There is sustaining technology, right? Technology that essentially says out there, I can do this more easily and more efficiently. Sustaining tech takes an existing process and whatever, it automates it, makes it more convenient, makes it simpler, makes it easier. Most basic example, we used to send letters with stamps and envelopes, blah, blah. Now we send email, now we send texts, okay? It's the same basic thing, we're just using it, we're doing the same thing, we're just using a different way to do it, faster, quicker, blah, 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 blah. The vast majority of all technology used in the legal market today, and this is not just by lawyers in private practice, this is across the board in courts and within clients and in businesses, it's sustaining tech, right? It's the same thing we've always done, but we're just going to do it with new technology. To be kind of blunt about it, it's a little bit like paving the cow path, right? We've had this cow path, pardon me, for a number of years, and it's the way we've always done it as lawyers. We get from A to B, and that's fine, and it works very nicely. And now we've paved it, and now we've got, laptop and everything, but it's still essentially the same cow path. That's sustaining tech. Disruptive tech says you don't need to take the cow path anymore. You don't need to do it the way it's been done. You don't need to do it the way lawyers have always done it in the past. The cow path is lovely, looks great, but here's an on-ramp to the highway. We want to consider doing it this way. Disruptive tech, as you know, is having massive impacts on industry and business and society across the board. And just a few examples to throw out there, which will be very familiar. iTunes took out HMV and the entire record store industry as we know it. I can still, to this, for a fleeting moment at the Radio Center in Ottawa, I can still walk from the Mac store within like 60 seconds. I'm walking past the HMV, and it's like going back in time. That's just in music. Netflix and Blockbuster, right? You talk about a company that was absolutely blindsided, that did not see it coming, is Blockbuster. And not just Netflix, Redbox, same thing, right? The idea of putting some money into putting a credit card into a vending machine and getting a movie out, right? Blockbuster didn't see it coming. Not that Netflix is a chocolate cake either, but Skype and airlines. I want to mention that specifically because it's easy to know about the ways in which Skype disrupts long-distance companies and Bell and so forth. That's straightforward. But disruptive technology does not stay within prescribed channels. Skype messed up the airline industry for a while because business travel started to go down. Because I don't got to fly to Vancouver anymore to see my colleague. I can Skype him or her, right? This is what happens when disruptive tech comes into an area and it's like lava flow. You have no idea where it's going to go. Coming down the train this morning, I was reading a piece which blew my mind, and maybe blew yours as well. In 2005, right, recent memory, Microsoft owned 95% of the market for internet-connected computers, computing devices. Today it's 20%. 7 years. Biggest, most powerful company in the world, eviscerated. Okay? That's disruptive tech, and it's scary as hell. And disruptive technology in the legal context displaces lawyers. It replaces, in some cases, lawyers. It doesn't replace very many. And it's going to take a while before it replaces full bore. And frankly, even if you talk to the disruptive tech authors, they're not interested in doing full-scale replacement. But I want to throw a few examples at you right now of what's available on the market and what machines can do. Lawyers can be annoying sometimes. They'll say things like, well, no computer will ever be able to do what it is that I do. And I'll say, that's not the problem. The problem is you keep trying to do what computers can do. Okay, this is what computers can do right now. This is a company called Concision with a K. Terrible name, there you go. It is a automated contract assembly program. Okay, you enter the kind of contract that you want. Down the left-hand side, it asks you a series of questions to gather data from you. In the center are the choices available to you. Pick whichever of these choices best fits your situation. If you're not sure what the answer should be, on the right-hand column there's explanations. If that explanation is not enough to help you, sometimes there's a little link to go and read more on a separate web page. It's an annotated contract assembly program. You don't need a lawyer to help you build this contract because the lawyer has been built into the algorithm. The lawyer's been built into the process. LexisNexis, by the way, is putting together a program which is very similar to this, but going to be a lot bigger. Because this is just a startup. But Lexis is getting into this business right now. Another example, a company called Neota Logic. These are the screenshots I grabbed from the programs. Neota Logic, an expert application. It answers legal questions. It answers legal, compliance, and regulatory questions. Once again, the idea is you choose your particular area. It asks you questions about your situation. It gives you options that you can choose from. And by the way, when you use these programs, it's not just a questionnaire, right? It's not just like a SurveyMonkey thing. This is a logic-driven questionnaire, which means that every answer you give it changes the nature of the next question that you're asked. Which, by the way, is exactly what lawyers do too, right? That's all we do when we're interviewing clients. Tell me about your situation. You're getting divorced. Do you have children? No? Okay, I'm going down this path. If the answer was yes, I'm going down this path. These systems essentially replicate that process. It was put together by the former knowledge management director of a top 20 New York law firm. And it is a massive legal KM database. Here's what it can do, here's what it's doing right now. Last term, Georgetown Law School, Washington, D.C. One of the classes involved taking the Neologic platform and using it to create an application that could answer everyday legal questions. This is the winning team. They put together an app that would answer questions about same-sex marriage legality in all 50 states. And that's law students. That's you guys doing that, right? That's what this kind of technology is capable of doing. Now, again, I talked to the guy, Mike Mills, behind this, and I said, how high and how far does this go? How far do you want it to go? Do you see this taking the whole market? I said, no, I don't want the whole market. He said, at a certain point, he said, the decision trees, the programming, the algorithms behind this, at a certain point, if you try to answer really complex questions, you're talking millions of lines of code. He said, just phone a lawyer. It's a hell of a lot easier. He says, we're not trying to get lawyers out of the business of this. We're trying to find more efficient ways of solving legal problems and creating value for clients. And that's all this is. I don't have to talk to you more about online dispute resolution, which at the end of the day could be bigger than all these other things combined. But ODR is, if you look up ODR at some point and check it out. eBay and PayPal together every year settle 60 million disputes among their users online without the use of a lawyer, without the use of a court. And G's doing some stuff. This company, Fair Outcomes, uses game theory to dispense with the entire lawyer-driven bargaining process of litigation. If I have a chance later on, I'll give you an example, because the example they gave me just blows my mind. Okay. Let's roll forward, and because I want to. Okay, 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I'm going to bring it to the end here. What does this mean for you? What's the impact for you personally, for this whole generation of law students coming out? Pardon me. 2 ways of looking at it, offer these two to you. First of all, yes, we're talking about the rise of the machines. I'm going to beat the Terminator analogy to death now. You're graduating into what I call an undiscovered country, a little Shakespeare, a little Star Trek. You are graduating into a profession that is going to be, over the course of the next years and decades, it's going to be brand new. Okay? The lawyers for whom you're going to be working in your first few years, the professors, to the extent that many of the profs here have exposure to the private practice of law, which is to say almost nil, the profession with which they are familiar is starting to pass away. When we get to the year 2025, 2035, 2040, when you're all going to still be involved in this community in some way, there is nobody, least of all me. I'm a quote-unquote futurist. Hate the term, but there you go, I'm stuck with it. My job is to talk about the future of the profession, and I can tell you I haven't a clue what it's going to look like. Because no one does, because no one knows what we do know, however, is that the great term and the great way to look at that is from Richard Susskind. If you have not read any of Richard Suskind's books, pick up one. He's a UK author and thinker. He is the godfather of thinking in this area. And he's got a great term. He says the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And that, by the way, is the opportunity directly in front of you going forward. Traditional lawyer jobs will become scarcer. They will become less secure. Here in Canada, that process will be delayed. You may not even notice it, depending on where you are in the process of going through. But over the course of the next several years, it's going to become very real. It is already absolutely underway in the U.S. Try this on for size. Bureau of Labor Statistics in the U.S. indicates, forecasts, over the next 10 years, there will be 212,000 new jobs created in the legal market, the legal industry in the U.S. 212,000. That's pretty awesome. In the next 10 years, American law schools are going to graduate 448,000 new lawyers. Right? That's what they're up against. It's not going to be as bad. It's not going to be remotely as bad here for any number of reasons, starting with the fact that we're not nearly as screwed up in terms of our legal system as they are, but that's the weather. Okay? That's the weather system you can look forward to for quite some time. Disruptive technology is going to take away a lot of lower value tasks, and these are the tasks that have sustained a lot of new lawyer work for a long time. It's not the main reason, because Canadian law firms aren't yet this sophisticated, but it's one of the reasons why our legal positions are going to become scarcer over the course of time, because the type of work that's traditionally been done by new lawyers, by apprentice lawyers, is just not going to be available. It's going to be done by an algorithm, it's going to be done by somebody in India. But here's the thing, technology cuts both ways. And to finish my Terminator analogy, I say what we need to do is fight with the machine, okay? Use it to our advantage and find ways in which we can adopt and co-opt this technology. My approach to this is that if non-lawyers, horrible phrase, I hate it, but I use it here advisedly, if non-lawyers can develop all of this software, all these algorithms, and bring them into the marketplace, we can use it better, right? Because we own this place. This is ours still, right? So far we own it by historical accident, but we can own it on merit. We can own it because we compete with everything else that's out there and says, you know what, I can take this technology and I can use it extraordinarily well. I can infuse it with my experience, with my professionalism, with my ethical standards, and make it extremely real. Oops, beg your pardon. The future of law practice is going to be low cost, it's going to be high performance, it's going to be client-centric. I can guarantee you that is not the past of the legal profession. I guarantee you. And any client can tell you the same thing. But that's the way it's going to look in the future. Okay? And to the extent that you tailor your own skills, tailor your own experiences, and your own capacities in that direction, you're going to be more than fine. You're going to be ahead of that curve. I talk to lawyers all the time. I say, climb the value ladder. I say, we use the term open the floodgates. Okay? When the floodgates open, you've been to the canal, you see what happens. The water comes up, and all those little ladders down the bottom of the canal, they just disappear underwater. That's what's going to happen in the legal market. The work at the bottom of the ladder is going to disappear, so you climb up. And you go for the work that, frankly, is the more rewarding work anyway. Not just personally and in fulfillment terms, but also, frankly, in terms of income, right? Providing counsel, giving your clients your insights, your wisdom, your judgment, right? That's David Maister, one of the great writers in this area, wrote a book called A Trusted Advisor. I recommend it to you, and it's a wonderful term. And it's what lawyers ought to be and what we can be. Strategy, offering strategy to your institutional and corporate clients. Prevention, huge, untapped market, right? Go back to Richard Susskind again. He says, wonderful line, he says, clients don't want an ambulance at the bottom of a cliff. They want a fence at the top, right? Give them that. Keep them out of trouble in the first place. There's a market for that. If you're going to be successful as a lawyer in the future, you're going to act like a startup. And you've got startups to talk with right here today, and they're going to be able to give you some of that perspective. You want to practice like a solo. You want to practice like someone, doesn't matter where you are. If you're in a big firm, if you're in a government department, think the way sole practitioners think. If you don't know, go talk to someone, because they are experienced business people who've seen it all. And then focus on value. If you are delivering value it doesn't matter who your client is, but if you're delivering real value, measurable value, you've got actual relationships in place where you can track that, then you're going to own this marketplace, because that is the successful lawyer of the future. And I think I've given you enough scary robots for the day. You've already gotten a preview. I'll say thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.